And we are live. So, well, first of all, welcome to the usual crew of the myself and James, the originals. We'll call ourselves, yeah. And not far behind, the Bartosz Blair is with us, and we are joined this
Hello.
evening by. Now, I want to get this right. You're not a psychologist; you're a psychotherapist. But,
That's
but,
right.
but you also know me somehow. What is the connection?
Yes, my dear brother, my dear old brother. Yes, I went into psychology after living with you for so many years, I think.
Yes. Well, it's. I mean, the thing is that I wanted to start off by asking you that the actual question of what is the difference between a psychologist and yourself. You are a psychotherapist. What's the difference there?
Um, there are actually lots of overlaps between psychologists, psychotherapists, counsellors. We all kind of work in a similar field, which is, trying to help people understand their problems and their difficulties, and to get a better understanding of themselves. So there's lots of overlaps. But as a psychotherapist, one of the things that I do is I meet with people individually over a period of weeks or months or years sometimes to help people understand themselves, to find some solutions for themselves, and to live happier lives.
Okay. So if somebody was, say, suffering from depression
Yeah.
and they get in touch with you, is it just a case of there's a simple sort of cure and a fix for that?
No, I mean, depression is one of those terms that covers a whole host of things. It's a bit of a scale. So for some people, it's they're feeling a bit sad or a bit unhappy, perhaps a bit anxious. And on the other extreme, there's, clinical depression. I mean, if somebody isn't doing well in their lives, if somebody's miserable, unhappy, depressed, then that's generally an indication that something isn't working well for them in their lives and that they need to make changes.
Right. I must admit, guys, not a field of expertise that I've really encountered that much. I suppose from my own point of view, had a happy upbringing with obviously Lucia, and we've got Lydia as well, and just never really felt that much pressure of life. So, you know, I find it at times, Eunice says at times, you're not very sympathetic, but it's because I can't relate to some of the things that people have difficulty with. It's okay.
Well,
I've got Eunice telling me here that she's also a counsellor, of course, yeah?
it is.
And she says I don't listen to her either. So
No, and actual fact that for a lot of people, no matter how lovely their lives may look on the outside,
mhm.
that doesn't mean that their internal life and how they're feeling is wonderful. People may be on the outside doing very well in their lives, professionally or personally. They may feel that they ought to be happy or they should be happy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are. If people don't have meaning in their lives or they don't have good relationships, then that can cause a lot of distress, regardless of, I don't know, how much money they earn or how successful they are. And for people that are successful in whatever field they're in, there can be a pressure to carry on being successful, to carry on achieving, a pressure to be better all the time. And of course, that's going to take its toll on people's mental health.
Okay, I'm gonna invite Greg and James to
Hmm.
ask you some of their questions. I've got some that I'd like to come back to if I may, but Greg, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I can see, what where you're saying that this is, and I do think that the hardest part for someone who is suffering in silence, when everything's going so well for them, and they think to themselves, well, what have I got to be depressed about at the end of the day? And that sort of I can't go and speak to someone because my life is, say, they've got a nice big house and they've got a nice flash car and beautiful wife and lovely kids, but inside they don't feel complete. And I think that's probably the hardest thing, is that they're not able to go and get help because they feel like they can't get help, because almost
Yes.
like no one would take them serious. Which could probably a hellish thing to, that'll be worse than actually having to just deal with it and say, because it's pretty,
There's
things
not a
get a little bit easier once you come out and admit.
point.
What's that, sorry, James?
So it's like there's not a problem to pinpoint per se. It's just a lack of fulfillment for whatever reason, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Uh-huh.
it's a lack of fulfillment for probably a culmination of reasons, but pinpointing it down to just one thing is probably the most difficult thing, rather than it being, I'm having a hard time in a certain aspect or whatever, and then being able to pinpoint and make the necessary changes in order for that. But if it's just a general lack of fulfillment, that must be, you know, that must be ultimately worse. And I dare say that's where,
Yeah.
people like yourself, excel at these things and come into the fray, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're all kind of conditioned in some way to think that we have to be successful, that we have to have a partner, we have to do well in our career, we have to do all of these things. And if we achieve those, then somehow we're supposed to be happy. But actually, on the inside, those things might not actually matter to us. They're just expectations that other people have placed on us. We need to find our own meaning, what's important to us. And for some people that might be career or houses or whatever it is. But ultimately, if you live in a way that is not aligned to your own internal values and beliefs, then you're going to be unhappy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly that.
it's So yeah, James, you
Yeah.
carry
Uh-huh.
on. Son, I was just going to say it's like when you put it like that, it's incredible. It's not simple. Simple is not the right word, but
Yeah.
it's like the sort of fun. It's fundamentally fairly like it's fairly uncomplicated for something that is ultimately very complicated, isn't it? It's a strange set of factors that culminate in this in what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, and for different people in society, we have different expectations. So perhaps for men, they have different expectations of what that means that may or may not live up to how you feel about yourself. There's also career pressures in terms of what you need to achieve to be acceptable and valued or to have self esteem and confidence. But again, if that isn't aligned to your, I don't know, what you truly believe or what's truly important to you, then there's going to be an inner conflict. There's going to be that kind of inner dialogue that goes on between I should be happy, but I'm not. Things should be fine, but they're not.
Okay, so Lucia, are there sort of like early symptoms of people being under stress, and is it possible to sort of diagnose it quite early? I mean, is it something that sort of starts off at a young age, for example? Can you sort of pinpoint?
Yes. Yeah,
Right.
so we know that if you're born into a family where you're loved and accepted and valued, you're likely to grow up, to have good relationships, to do well in life, and ultimately you're going to feel secure in the world and you're going to be happier. If you grow into a family where there's conflict, where people aren't there for you, either emotionally or physically, then you're going to struggle in life. And that's probably where a lot of mental health problems stem from, is in our early childhood.
So,
You
so
know,
what would be the sort of early symptoms of somebody? I mean, is it possible, for example, for us to look at somebody and say, you know what, pal? I don't know if anybody's told you this, but you might be suffering from some sort of depression. You need to go and get that, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that's seen some of these adverts up, posters up, particularly in, for example, the gents lose, isn't there? There's the yeah, I'm fine, but I'm not really, sort of thing. What are the sort of things that we can look out for?
Well, the thing is, it's really hard to spot
Mm,
it in other people because, on the whole, people are very good at covering up how they actually feel. That persona that we present to the world that shows us as being happy or confident or good in our relationships may not actually match up with how we feel inside. And that's why, when somebody perhaps takes their own life or something like that, people say, I didn't see that coming. And that's because the person presented as being okay. Um, so it is quite hard to spot in other people. But I think part of the key is being able to recognize it in ourselves, to notice, if somebody's for young people, you can probably notice if they're withdrawn, if they're isolated, if they find it hard to make friends. If they're struggling, it's easier to spot somebody struggling in that way, and you can help them. I think part of the difficulty when we're adults, so, is that we're good at hiding it.
mm.
We're good at hiding that we're not okay.
Because certainly in the world of speedway, most of the riders that we're talking about, if they are having sort of depression or just sort of psychological issues, we are talking about very young men in a high octane sport. I mean, does being a sporting celebrity bring its own pressures?
I'm sure it does. I'm sure the riders there are probably more familiar with that than I am. But of course, if there is pressure, if there's stress, if there is a need to do better or to be good, if there's a need to put a lot of expectation on yourself, then of course that can cause difficulties for you. I think, traditionally, when we look at things like men who have joined the armed forces, I think we do better at it now in recognizing that things like PTSD can exist or that people have struggled under really extreme situations. Um, and I think an element of that can exist in all kinds of different forms.
Sure. I mean, it's it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, Greg, you were saying about how it was that if somebody has an off night in the team, everybody rallies round to make them feel as good because you've won as a team. That person hasn't done particularly well, um, but I suppose, how do you go to the next stage of then off doing more to support that individual rider that you feel, maybe they're being a bit quiet because they are having problems.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing, and like I don't often publicly discuss it myself, but
Sure.
throughout last year, um, when you talk about hiding behind things and everything else like that, and the season I had in 2021, winning 2 awards at the end of the season, rider of the year and the public vote for the rider of the year.
Mm,
Um, inside of me, I was absolutely crumbling, and it took me until about November time until I thought I'm actually going to have to go and see someone here because things are not how they should be.
mm,
And as I touched on earlier, the biggest problem I had is I don't actually have a reason to feel like this, and that was incredibly difficult. And then when I went in, sat down, and spoke to someone who was a specialist in there, I told them everything, and they didn't really care about what was going on at that side of my life. It was more just a case of, right, this is what's going on just now, and let's just baby steps and start getting things going. And it wasn't until, and I can see this with so many riders, um, from March to October, you are signing autographs, you're with your mates, you're on tours, you've got group chats going constantly. When the Speedway season ends, it's a very, very lonely time.
mm,
You know,
Yeah.
all these guys sort of go back into their, not saying their caves, but they're doing their winter prep where they're doing their fitness thing. They're very, very little interaction with each other. I mean, yeah, we chat and stuff, but we almost, you have to remember, we do live quite a distance away
yeah.
from each other. It's not
Mhm.
like a local five-a-side football team where you'll meet each
Mm,
other at the pub or bump each other on the street. For me, I almost was a bit naive of myself, even in being in my 30s. I kind of pushed all my old mates to the side when I had my Speedway thing going on. And then when I come back off the Speedway, everybody else had already made their plans and was doing their own thing. And I was kind of left like, oh,
Wow.
I'm a bit on my own there. And
Yeah.
it's a very fine line. You have to watch what you're doing. And I think I'm lucky enough that I've got the experience. I've had the good people around me that have helped me out with it all. And I would feel like I could speak to anyone about it if there was someone having problems, a teammate or even someone in the other team, just even speaking out on this. If someone was just saying, look, I'm not feeling 100%, what do you think I should do? Um, First of all, is go and get professional advice. And then afterwards, once you've done that, then talk to someone that's been through it or going through it, and you can gel from that. And again, it's just the smallest things you can do for people. Even just, all right, how are you today? And a reply back of them and a little bit of chit chat, that could lift someone up who's not spoke to anyone for 2 days. I mean, you have to remember this
Totally.
sport, these lads are traveling from Poland, Sweden, motorways on their own all the time. And just that little 2 minute interaction, that could lift someone so much. So, and the other side, I know I'm going on, but the other side of the Speedway is it's very difficult to get talking to a rider because the start of the meeting, you've got to be very focused. You have to switch off. There'll be a certain point of a night where I will chat away to anybody, and then usually about 20 minutes before the start of the meeting, I wouldn't say ignorant, but I'll not really entertain anyone because I'm having to focus on what I'm about to do, which is a very dangerous sport. So you have to sort of get out of that. So trying to speak to someone who's getting into that mental focus, it's difficult. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, try to find how someone's feeling. It's seriously difficult, this sport.
Yeah.
You make a good point there, Greg, as well. You say obviously it's from March to October, it's a very intense sort of time period, as it were. You've got meetings down the country, you're here, there, and everywhere, and logistics and all the rest of it, as well as obviously the on-track stuff as well. And then, as you say, all of a sudden October comes and it stops. And then the other thing, the other sort of, then obviously there's then that sort of initial relief that it's probably all over, and then there's that sort of then that lull in between, which can be obviously a fairly difficult time. And that comes from both probably a fan's perspective, where I'm speaking from, and a rider's perspective as well. And I think again, what must be difficult, and I know I've seen comments about things like sports like American football, and I think the same applies for Speedway as well. Not that the two of them are comparable in terms of the size or the sort of global scale that they're on, but there was often a thing saying, there's these guys that go into the American football, they play for the teams. There's thousands of people there watching them, chanting their name, and all that sort of stuff, and then there's nothing at the end of it for them. There's not, the 2 or 3 all get into doing punditry and stuff like that, or coaching or whatever. And the Speedway is very much like that as well. There's these guys that will go on, and again, you've seen it yourself, Greg. There's guys and there's riders that we often say that guy did a season too many, or he's not as good as he used to be because he did a season too many. Or you watch someone that was great at one time, and then they start to go on this downward spiral, and their form's not as good as it was, and you say, they should have retired. What if that's all they've got keeping them going?
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
That must be the case with loads of riders, like loads of them. That must be the one thing that sort of is their sort of sanctuary, or their sort of their sort of, I don't know, their sort of comfort zone, as it were, if you like. And I know even myself, like I've worked in jobs in the past that I hated. I didn't want to be there at all, and but you would always you'd be having a bad day on a Wednesday, for instance, and I'd be like, do you know what? It's fine, because come Saturday, I'll be away down the road. I'll see some mates. We'll get a bit nighty racing, and then that's fine. But then that's not necessarily a healthy cycle to be in either. When you've got that one, it's good to have things to look forward to. But if that's all that's sort of that you're striving towards, and then obviously you then have this huge buzz for that 2 or 3 hours that it's on,
and then you're driving home, you think, oh, Christ, it's a whole 7 days away until the next one, and then you've got to go through
And
this
you
cycle again.
and James, you saying that just now, you try and tell me that Speedway is not an addictive sport.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
that's,
It's
isn't it? Really, I mean, it's totally addictive, and I go through it as well. And the stuff that I'm involved with, you have like these busy spells during the season. You've got, deadlines for getting columns in and blogs on the website and stuff like that, and or you've got replaces and whatnot, and it all ends, and it's like, oh, this sort of huge weight, but then it's like, oh, what am I gonna do? You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
you go through this where you oh, okay, right, it's the last year I'm doing it, I'm not doing any more of that again, and then it just happens, and it is an addictive sport by its nature. Like once it's got you, it's got a grip of you.
oh yeah, oh exactly, totally has.
Well, I mean, Lucia, you were saying that because of me taking Stuart to Plymouth, see the Bandits, he's never shut up about it. He just loved it that much. So, yeah, it must be that. I mean, I can remember as a youngster going on a Saturday to watch Hereford United, but then it didn't matter whether they won, lose, drew, or whatever, or how well they played. It was great if they did, but just go to the nightclub and relax and just enjoy. But you know, I tend not to get too emotional one way or the other, whether we win, lose, or draw. I mean, as Greg, as you were saying, about your illness, boy, if that's how you meet up when you
Aye,
when you
exactly.
lose, imagine what it's going to be like when you win. But Lucia, COVID, what effect has that had? You know, for you being sort of kept busy with the psychotherapist. Has it had a big difference? Is it something that because is it something that's kind of grown as people become more aware of it as an issue?
I think a bit like what Greg and James were saying with COVID, that there's something about a shared collective experience that is very bonding. When you go, perhaps when you go and you ride Speedway and you talk about it addictive and the fans are there, and there's a sense of excitement, there's a sense of togetherness, there's a shared purpose, there's a meaning. That experience holds so much for people individually and collectively. And perhaps for you as riders, you get a strong sense of yourself. There's a lot of validation in that experience. And, perhaps you feel great. And then it finishes. And then perhaps there's a sense of, well, I'm not connected to other people. I'm feeling a bit on my own. I'm a bit isolated. And I guess in a sense that's what COVID did as well, that people that were connected and had support networks and people and groups that they belonged to suddenly found themselves on their own. And it's not a dissimilar experience to being busy with what you're doing for the season and then finding yourself out of that and not getting the same kind of rewards or feedback that you were getting. Isolation is really difficult for people if you don't have connections with other people, if you don't have friendships. We don't do well. People don't do well isolated from other people. We're social beings and we need to be connected to other people. And I guess that's the similarity between, and that's what COVID's done. It's left people isolated and on their own. And I think for a lot of people, they cut off from the rest of humanity and haven't yet found a way. Some people haven't yet found a way to rejoin. And I think that's also a problem.
Right.
If people feel, cut off and isolated, we don't do well in those circumstances.
Okay, and so just to go back to Greg, it was great to hear you talk about your experiences last season. But do you find, Lucia, that it's mainly people who decide they want to get help that come and approach you, or is it more a case of people say to you, I've been told to go and get help by somebody. I suppose what I'm asking is, do some people come to you directly, or are some of them like referrals?
Sometimes they're referrals. On the whole, most of the people I see recognising themselves that they're not happy, that
Mm-hmm.
things aren't going well for them, that they're struggling. And actually, it's useful to have a space and somebody else to explore that with and talk through their options and how they're feeling about things. I think a lot of people find themselves in positions or situations that has followed perhaps other people's expectations, and they've not necessarily been true to themselves or followed their own path.
Hmm. So it's really a case of to begin with that it's more a case of self-diagnosis.
For a lot of people, I mean, sometimes, if somebody is always struggling to find friendships, is always struggling to find a relationship, can never hold down a job, all of those kind of things might lead somebody to think there's something in my life that isn't working for me. I'm not doing this very well.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Sometimes people around them will point that out for them.
That's,
And that's
that's
the same as what we were talking about earlier. I
Mm,
guess in no way am I wanting to make this out to be um what's easier, but I guess if you say if you're in a job or even if a relationship that's not going well, you can pinpoint that, and that does make it a little bit easier to understand. But I guess like you see these you see some celebrities that they've got millions in the bank, they've got fans cheering their name, and they seem to have the best life ever. And the next thing you know, they're suffering, or they've
yeah,
attempted to take their own life and stuff like that. And you just think, you know, people they'll get absolutely shredded in the media for it, and you think, they shouldn't, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, we're all the same. Um, and I'm kind of like along the lines of I don't really like to judge people that much. If you get someone that buys the best of brands of clothing, they've got to buy, say, they've got to buy a shirt that's 200 quid, or like this one that was £2 in a charity shop. If that, it,
good.
if you going out and spending that £200, and as long as you can afford to do that, and it's not going to put you in any kind of debt, if you can afford to go out and spend £200 on a shirt, and that releases, the endorphins in your brain that says, oh well, yes, then go with it. If you're into watching these, like I particularly don't really think they're much good, the reality TV. If you can sit down, watch that with your glass of wine and whatever, if that's something that does it for you, then I'm not going to tell you not to do it.
Yeah,
It's the same as, like, sorry to say it, but nothing. People say, "Oh, that's shite." You hear it too much, but personally, nothing really is. It's just not my thing.
yeah,
And if
yeah,
somebody was to say to me, "Oh, why are you doing that? It's shite," I'm like, "Well, it's no, because I love it. It's just no your thing. You've probably got something that you do that I'm not really that I wouldn't agree on." So, everybody's different, and as my mum's always told us, it would be a pretty boring world if we were all the same.
Oh, yeah.
it's a true story.
yeah.
It's a true story. Just what I found interesting what you were saying there about the sort of COVID times. Now, I was kind of hoping I never have to speak about COVID again, to be quite honest, but never mind. Here we are. But I know that, like, I worked right through the COVID lockdowns and all that sort of stuff, and I know that I knew plenty of people that weren't, and they were furloughed and stuff like that, and a lot of them were, of course, when they first got furloughed, they thought it was great because the weather was great, and that was fine. But then I think once that initial sort of initial period, if you like, was over, they then started to get that sort of fear that maybe there wouldn't be jobs for them to go back to, or that sort of uncertainty, which we all felt to a degree. Well, but I do know that a lot of people said to me, "Oh, it must be great. You've got a routine. You're in, and you're in at your work, and you've still got that routine." And while yes, that it was good to have that routine, it was also incredibly monotonous because I had nothing else going on.
Mm,
And
Aye.
again, I realised that that's not exclusive to me. That is the same thing that millions of people in the country had. But
mm,
that was something that I found really, really hard.
mm,
Was that despite the fact that there was maybe less people at my work or whatever, there were still the same issues, the same pressures, the same sort of stuff that you're having to deal with, and the same sort of pressures at work and stuff like that. The 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 big thing for me was like that was all fine having that, but then you got home and you could do nothing, and there was no Speedway on, there was no nothing on, there was nothing you could go to, and I must admit that, like, I've had my problems with my own sort of, again, depression or whatever you want to call it, in the past, and I know that, like, that time was really, really difficult, and I think that loads of people would see an impact of that at the time. I know that it had a major impact at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Marty has contributed a couple of items. I wanted to ask Lucia specifically, I suppose, because I can only imagine Greg being a speedway rider, but this pressure of expectation to perform and to be consistent, and when it isn't, how do you help somebody with their stress being because of this pressure? This pressure to, as I say, pressure to perform, this pressure of expectation. Is there anything that you can do to help somebody in that situation?
I think there are several things, aren't there? We all have a bad day, or we always have a day when it doesn't go how we want it to do. And we can either accept that didn't go my way and move on, or we can say that didn't go my way and I'm a bad person and I always get it wrong and it's because never anything works out right for me. And we can put a whole load of other judgment and those critical internal voices on ourselves, which make us just feel absolutely crap, really. Whereas
Right.
if we can say that didn't go my way, never mind, dust myself off and move on, we're going to cope with life's ups and downs better than if we tell ourselves it's because we're no good or we're worthless or we never get anything right. It's the damage that we do to ourselves with that internal critic or internal judgments that we have. Um, that's a bit that isn't helpful, rather
Okay.
than accepting some days it doesn't go our way.
Okay. Greg and James, as you know, the promoter that took over from the gaffer Peter Waite was John Anderson, and there was a really good overlap of Peter Waite and John Anderson. John Anderson got involved, and then I got invited by Peter Waite to support the Alexander brothers at Selkirk at the Victoria Hall to promote the Speedway.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very close friends with John Anderson because he's so much into the Scottish music. I always remember one day he saw me in the crowd. Yeah, Paul, come here, and he took me onto the centre green with the sponsors as guests.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he said to me, he said, I said, oh, it's going really well for you. He said, yeah, I've got 7 happy riders. And I thought at the time that's an interesting thing. I always thought being a speedway rider would be like the ultimate thrill and the excitement. Why wouldn't you be absolutely ecstatic? And why wouldn't it be a case of you're happy? So the fact that he said, made a point of, it's going really well. I've got 7 happy riders that want to ride for Berwick and they want to do well. And it struck me that, hold on a sec. Sometimes that isn't the case.
No, not at all.
No, not at all.
We've seen it in the past, where you can you almost get a sense for it. And Greg, you'll agree with this as well. Following any team, but we'll use Berwick as the example. We've had riders over the years at various times, but like had less of them than most probably. But you always get that odd time where you just sense that there's a rider that doesn't want to be there, or doesn't want to ride for the club, and doesn't want to give it their all. And again, to flip that on its head as well, and you've said this before as well, Greg, that when you're going out and you're enjoying your racing, the points tend to come like organically, as it were. Whereas if you're putting the pressure on yourself, and I know I've wound you up about your scoring in the past, but it is all in jest. But it's, you know,
You'll get what you're given,
again, that's
son.
one of
That's
but seven's enough for me. But no, that's, you know what I mean. It is. It's one of those things that, like, it's a different thing. You're saying that, and again, we've had the same conversation on about the difference in the pressures between your riding now and when you were, you know, riding, what, 10, 12 years ago. And it's vastly different, isn't it? You know what I mean? There's not the same pressure. You're in a unique position, I suppose, where you can just go out and enjoy what you're doing. And then if you score 15, great. If you score 7, well, do you know what? Still enjoyed myself. That's fine. You know what I mean? And you'll have to fit another day. And not that it doesn't matter. You obviously want to go out and score points, but, you know, if you score 7, and, you know, that's great. If you score 15, it's great. If you score 3, well, I'll get 7 or 8 or 10 the next time. And it's almost irrelevant, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I tend to say it to quite a lot of the lads in the team. Probably because I'm that older guy in the squad, and I can just say to them, like, if they've had a bad night and if they've run, say they've had 3 lasts and dropped out the last ride, I will say to them, look, forget about it. You can't change it. I know it's upsetting and it's frustrating, but it's more a case of, look, it's a long drive home for wherever you are, unless it's Berwick. But, you know, if we're away somewhere, it's a long drive home. There's no point getting too miserable about it. Go out and do something that's actually going to, like, cheer you up. So say a rider, for instance, if I was going out and I had run a load of lasts, I'll use Leicester as an example. Leicester, I scored 4 points, which was at the time was my worst score that I've had this season, and I was hunting for something to find like that I could take home and be happy with. My last race, I went out in heat 14, and just going into the turn, not enough drive. I was battling for the lead with Tom Spencer, and I came down, and as I was sliding along the track, I still had my hand on the handlebars, so the cutout hadn't come off, and I knew that there wasn't getting any damage done because it was just dusty and sliding along. And I thought, right, there's 2 laps left. Go out and put in 2 decent laps. And I went out and I went flat out round the track, and it was the best laps I put in round Leicester. Went home on a high because I now know how to ride it. And it was the same at Bellevue when I was there on Friday. Right, I've not had the greatest of nights, but to be fair, Bellevue were so strong at home. Mildenhall hammered them. Right, I need to do something here that's going to put a smile on my face because I've not scored. Even though I top scored was 7,
Yeah.
I need to do something that's going to cheer me up. Oh, Nathan Ablett's on a maximum. Right, let's go out and ruin that. So, you know, it's like something like that. Just do something on the night that's going to make you happier. And I try and tell the boys that all the time. Go out and do something. And I think it's probably because of the fact that I was out the sport for so long and I missed it for so long, is that I often tell Ben Rathbone this. When he's about to go out, I say, right, Ben, I want you to go out in this race and ride the bike like it's the last time you're ever going to ride it, because you don't actually know when that's coming. Either financial, injury, or you might just turn round in the winter. I mean, I've seen it happen so many times where you've got these riders throughout the winter. I'll just go, you know what? Nah, I'm not doing it anymore. So, and there's a lot of lads that ride the bikes quite a lot, and I think it takes away the magic of what it's actually like. Every time I go out on my bike, because I know what it's like to have missed it, I ride it like it is the last time I'm going to ride it. And I like, you've all seen it when you've watched me riding. When I finish a race, I get so excited, and that's the energy that I've got building up inside while the race is going on. I can finally let it out when the checkered flag goes up, and that's a cutouts off, and I'm getting it all this. So,
coasting down the track and standing balancing on one foot.
It's just just having to tell these lads, and like I said before, something that I would like to mention is just that the fact that, I mean, it probably came as a shock a few people watching this to say that I had struggles throughout last year and I kept it to myself and I kept it hidden, and probably because there was a little bit of pressure on me to be the, you know, when I got tarred with the box office name, that I had to wear a mask, and I did struggle quite a lot, that I had sort of went in feet first, put this mask on as the entertaining guy, the guy that'll speak to everybody. And I'll tell you, there was times where I got to the track and I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to ride the bike and go home. There was nights I didn't even want to ride the bike. I was just in this hole. And I think people will probably be shocked to know that I was having that bother. So if there is anybody out there that's like suffering just a little bit, there's no shame in saying, yeah, I'm having problems, because walking to doctors, they've probably seen about, you go in at 10 o'clock in the morning, they've probably seen about 15 people with the same thing. So, it is still a bit of a taboo subject, but just,
Totally,
do yourself, do what's right for you. And if somebody's got a problem with it, it's pretty weird if they do have a problem that you're trying to look after your own mental health. They've probably got more problems themselves if they think that what you're doing is strange. So, no, and I mean, just if anybody out there is watching and they are struggling, drop us a message and I'll chat about it openly, because
I'd echo that as well, and say the exact same thing. If anybody is, struggling with it, and I know, and again, that's like our involvement, if you like, with the club is obviously at different sides of the fence and different aspects of it and things like that.
But again, we're the same people. We're people.
Yeah, exactly.
Same
We're all
interests.
same interests, and I can totally relate to what you're saying about being in, finding yourself in a bit of a hole. And I would only echo the sort of what you exactly said. And anybody that feels the need to get in touch will always chew the fat over it. You know what I mean? Even if it is just because it's over a common interest, and it's just to have that sort of rapport with it. And I think no, it is. It's we're all here. We're all there for the same reason, and for that reason alone, we should all be there to help one another.
I mean, we have to just, all we have to do is look back to 2020 when the speed world was shocked when Danny Ayres took his own life, who would have, was something that you never thought would have ever happened. The guy that, the kind of entertainer he was, the way he rode his bike, the way he interacted with the fans, it's, you just, and I hate to say it, and I really do hate to say it, you often sometimes wonder who's going to be the next shocker.
There's always I mean, these things are always a shock. It's never something that you expect, is it? I mean,
yes,
it is, and it's a, again, I can talk through my own experiences. That I lost my uncle through, and again, well, you both knew him. Last guy on the planet that you'd have thought would do something like that, and it would have been, the irony in that is that if I was struggling, he'd be the guy I'd go to, probably the first port of call. And again, I've seen it. It's happened. I've been there, and no, you're not having the best of days, or you're not having the best of times, or you're struggling with this or struggling with that, or whatever it might be. And you would speak to him, and then after no time, the two of you would be rolling about on the floor, killing yourself, laughing about someone else, and it was all forgotten about. Kind of it. And that was how it was. So yeah, there is. It is. I mean, it's never. You never hear of somebody going, "Oh, well, I saw that coming." I mean, that never works like that. But you're right. And Danny Ayres, that was a massive shock. And for all, like, I didn't know him or anything like that, but because of who he was, what he did, you felt like you did. It was in a strange sort of way. And yeah, I think a lot of people, would have felt, shocked by that, obviously. But I think as well, and again, Martin commented on here before. It says, about social media. That must, like, since social media became a thing. I don't know, you can maybe speak to this as well, Lucy. Has there been like a massive, like, increase in sort of cases, or is it more common, or is it more? Is that a reason for it, or because I think, again, with social media, it allows people to obviously go out there and say what they say, but what they probably don't realize is that the things that they say have an impact on people. And I just wonder, has there been like a big sort of, I don't know if influx is the right, or an increase in sort of cases where that's a factor?
Absolutely, and especially amongst younger people, that people can be targeted or bullied, and often I think people who are saying nasty things on social media, they can feel a bit anonymous or a bit removed. They'll say things on a social media platform that they wouldn't say to a person in the room with them.
Yeah.
So I think when we're using social media, it's that thing, isn't it? To remember, if we're not going to say that to somebody's face, why would we post that?
Yeah.
And, especially there has been, for young people, I know for girls can be targeted about their weight, their looks, their eating. And, for boys, there are other pressures. But certainly, people can be very, very unkind on social media. Oh, Alessandra, hi. Hi, lovely. Oh,
That's one thing about the social media, and I don't know if it's because of the person I am. I don't know if it's because of like the age that I'm at riding, at the level that I'm at riding, is I quite enjoy it if someone says to me, "Oh, you were getting a slagging off on a fan page," and I'm like, "Oh, what are they saying about me?" and go on, and I quite enjoy like, right, so I can guarantee that this guy's never ridden a bike before. He's brought, he's got no idea how much money I've poured into this, and blah blah blah, and everything else. And my favorite comment is when you get people that say, "Oh, he looks like he wasn't trying." Now, he's a good mate of mine. Theo Piper was at Pool, and I think it was on the BSN. Was it filmed on the BSN?
It was.
And people were commenting on pages or what on Facebook or forums or whatever, saying Theo Piper wasn't even bothered. And I'm like, he's travelled from Bigger to
What have we lost them?
I don't know. You just gone quiet, but
I disappeared there, didn't I?
Yeah, yeah.
I did. Yeah, back again. No, but as I was saying, Theo went from Bigger all the way down to Pool, and
Why
is he
would
going
you
to
try?
go there and just go, I can't be bothered with this today?
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not just at that level. It's not just a hobby. You know what I mean? That's paying the bills. That's not just paying engine bills. That's paying the
yeah.
heating and stuff like that. So people are very small-minded to think, oh, he went down there and couldn't be arsed.
It's
I went all the way to
That,
Kent and scored 4 points. Do you think I did that deliberately? I wanted to go there and get like I always try and go for double figures. If I hadn't have went away to the White Cliffs of Dover and had a lovely afternoon, I would have been in a foul fettle. But I managed to turn that round. But
yeah.
yeah,
But
people are too
Greg,
quick to judge on social media. Yes.
Greg, your Facebook page just after Greg Blair. What does it say?
Oh
You've
yeah.
written, if you're on here.
If you're on here because I've died, take a look around. I had a great time. Something along the lines of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because
I
that's
mean,
what you do, and it's a horrible thing to say, but if you see someone that's locally been killed in an accident or something, you go on their Facebook page to see if you knew them, and then you have a bit look through their photos. It's just what everybody does nowadays. So I stuck that there just on the off chance that I was crushed by the tree, and that's it. And I
selling the
have enjoyed
background
myself.
trees there.
yeah. Lucia, I wanted to ask you a little bit about you. Although you didn't accompany me down to Plymouth, you have been to Shieldfield Park.
is that to see? Is that where Berwick?
Yeah, the Boat Bandits.
Yes,
I
yes.
mean,
No,
I mean, I mean, I mean, seriously, from a psychotherapist's point of view, surely anybody riding a speedway bike at speeds of 70 mile an hour in a confined circuit with no brakes, they must be mad to begin with anyway, mustn't they?
purely certifiable.
Yes, yeah. But it does. Sort of joking aside, though, does that help to create? I suppose this what Greg was on about, how you can be put on this mask and pretend to be something that you aren't. Does that help to amplify that?
Well, possibly. I
Oh,
mean, I mean, thinking about you guys that go around that track at that speed with no brakes. I mean, apart from the fact it's absolutely crazy, there must be something that's really addictive about the adrenaline, the excitement, a sense of team, whatever that is. And I imagine for a lot of people, perhaps for a lot of riders, for a lot of fans, something like that is a reason to get up. It's a reason to, it might give meaning in somebody's day. I think somebody posted in one of the comments a little while ago about actually it was a reason to get up to go.
Yeah.
It gave meaning
Yeah.
somebody's
I
somebody's life.
can totally relate to that. You know, it is. It's got this. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's easy to explain to the people that go, because they'll totally understand it. It's hard to explain what it's like to sort of outsiders or people that maybe don't have that interest. But it's one of those things. It's the full package. It's almost like I don't know. It's almost like obviously you get the buzz of the racing and the smell and the noise and the entertainment sort of factor, but it's a what do you call it? It's a sort of, it's the social aspect of it as well.
Yeah.
You know, you catch up with that, because I mean, to be honest, if it wasn't for the Speedway, I wouldn't have many friends, to be honest. You know what I mean? That's where a lot of it is. You know, I've made a lot of friends at it. It's taken me places that ordinarily I would never have been, and it's afforded me opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't have had. And it's you know, and it's something that I'll always be grateful for. You know, for that. If and again, it's a sort of thing. Funny, Greg mentions that the social media thing. Since we've been doing the commentary thing, which is like something much like these sort of live chats and stuff. And Paul doesn't believe me on this, but
I don't believe it, John. Yeah, I like duck to water.
Things that are sort of out with my sort of usual sort of comfort zone, as it were. But you know, you give it a go, and the commentary thing, and Greg's done it as well with me, and you know, it's good fun, and it's something that I enjoy. But if there's been a race maybe shared on social media or something like that, you make the mistake of maybe looking at the comments to see what's being said, whether it's about the race or whether it's about the commentary or whatever. And then it would be really easy to, if someone was saying, the commentary was shite or whatever, you know, it would be really easy to sort of like, oh, well, you know, it must be. But the way I sort of see it is, well, do you know what? Maybe I am terrible at it. And if I am, then that's fine. But it's one of those things that, do you know what? We're giving it a go. And if somebody else wants to come and have a go, by all means, they're most welcome to. And they'll possibly realise that it's more difficult than it maybe appears. But it's all too easy to criticise, isn't it?
And that's the thing, James. And I will say, probably somebody that you don't realise that you idolise in Speedway. I don't think you really know that you idolise them, but you do. Is my dad absolutely loves your commentary. If I send him and I'm no just saying that, if I show my dad a video that Graham sent me, and I'll put it on the iPad or I'll put it on my phone or whatever, my dad's already seen the race, but he's not heard the commentary.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, James gets right into it, doesn't he? And he loves that you've got that passion, because I don't know how to say it. You're not putting it on. You know,
No.
you can't put that on. And if you were putting that on, you should walk away from the Speedway and get a job as an actor, because the way, you know, both you and Marty, the way you get all excited about it, and I do, you know, the other thing I've said it before, and like in my opinion, you know, the voice of Formula One, Murray Walker, and then you've got my other favourite commentator in the Speedway, Tony Millard. They got it wrong quite often, getting names mixed up and stuff like that, because they were that excited about it.
It's so easy to do as well.
And you know, and I mean, you get so excited that you're just, the last rider that was out, he was in red, and you'll shout his name. And I think it shows that you're really passionate about it if you're getting it wrong. Because if you were bang on getting it right, you'd be too busy looking at your notes.
Yeah.
And a proper commentator shouldn't really be looking at his notes, in my opinion. So no, and people say, oh, you know, he's annoying, or his commentary is no great, or whatever else like that. So people don't like me. I don't care either.
it's one of those things that, like, and again, you've done it as well, and it isn't easy, is it? You know what I mean? It's
No.
because everything's, well, again, for the rider's perspective, you know how quickly everything's moving and how quickly it can change. And the thing I often say is, you know what, there was a comment on the Speedway forum, I think, and it was the race had been shared, and I can't remember if it was maybe the Chris Harris race against Oxford, maybe, possibly. Anyway, it's irrelevant. And someone had said, "Oh, commentator shouting too much" or something like that. I didn't think much of the commentary or whatever. And I thought, I'm going to reply to that. So I shouldn't have, but I did. And I was like, do you know what, big man? You're more than welcome to come and have a go. I'll quite happily sit in the stand for the night, watch the meeting. And guess what? I had no reply. So, so I was gutted. I got the night off. But
Lucia. Sorry, James, come on. I was going to say, first of all, I really like your shirt, Greg. £2.50 well spent. Mine free of charge. It was a birthday present or a Father's Day present
from someone who didn't like you.
My daughters. And they get me a loud shirt every year, so there's always going to be a good supply of them. You mentioned the commentary. Can I as I've got Lucia here, just play a short little bit of the commentary of Greg Blair riding, so you can see why we think Greg is so mad. I know it's a little bit light-hearted, considering that we are discussing a serious subject, and we will get back onto some more serious issues just very shortly. But here we go.
Is Luke Muff, is it? Luke Muffin of Yellow 4. So, there's nothing a given in this one, but you can bet your bottom dollar the box office player will be doing absolutely everything to throw the proverbial at the Venn Tiger Man, should he need it.
Yeah, it's we've been treated to some fantastic action here tonight.
We really have.
And National League Speedway, it's pretty bloody entertaining.
It really is, and you only hope from a Bullet's perspective that Greg's dug deep into his toolbox, reached out and found a start out of somewhere and can just rip Snort away from the start, get his wheels in line. But we're about to find out in this one, James. Revs going high, Star Marshal away, tapes rise. Who's made the best fist of it? It's Alex Spooner and white, but Ben Rathbone on the inside's made a brilliant start. Can he block the move of Alex Spooner? And here comes box office as well.
Yeah, Ben Rathbone making a rip snorting start there, getting the better of Alex Spooner, and Greg Blair is in third place at the moment. A 4-2 of the Bullets as things stand at the moment, but you just know that Greg Blair's going to throw absolutely everything that he has at Alex Spooner.
Comes Blair.
Here comes Greg Blair going for the big blast.
Quite there for Blair.
Not quite getting there. Alex Spooner hangs on into second place. Here it comes again, rounds bend 1 and 2. 2 laps to go.
There's
Blair comes
Blair
round to the inside.
Can he make it work on the corner? He's done him.
Bullets on a 5-1, which means that if it stays like this, or at least the worst they can do is a draw tonight. Absolute crucial.
My goodness.
Blair all out of shape. What on earth are you doing, Greg Blair? But Ben Rathbone out in front, looking so fast and so stylish. And if it stays like this, he's going to be the man of the match for me tonight. Ben Rathbone's been absolutely tremendous.
Bucking and rearing all over the shop, managing to stay on the bicycle.
High, wide and handsome indeed is Greg Blair.
Yes. And Ben Rathbone's stealing a march.
Yeah, Ben Rathbone. Reserve switch. What an astute bit of team management
It really was. And hats off to him. He made a brilliant start, rode a clever first and second bend. And, well, you said it before the race. If there was a man that you needed to do the business when it mattered, it was box office. And he duly delivered. He was more out of shape than Zebedee at times, but he done the business. And I would say that he's pretty chuffed with that one.
I don't know.
Absolutely buzzing.
Does he look chuffed to you?
Just a bit. And the T-sider, Ben Rathbone behind him.
I tell you, for me tonight, Ben Rathbone's been man of the match for me tonight.
I can't go against that, you know. And of course, one race to go.
Crucial.
Bullets have put themselves in a fantastic driving seat in this one.
Yeah. First of all, apologies that whole commentary was in Scottish. Did you understand a word of it?
It was amazing. That was amazing commentary.
It was. Luckily, you did have a couple of years up at Menstrie near Stirling, so you do know a little bit of Scottish, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I mean, that was pretty bizarre, wasn't it? You know, I mean, the as you say, James, you know, it's so exciting, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, I mean, I get excited about it. You might have noticed.
Might have noticed.
Yeah, no, I do. The thing is, like that. Not that I call, not that when I'm sitting in the stand, I call everything word for word, but my reactions to stuff isn't any different than what it would be if I was standing, you know, in the pits, or if I was standing, you know, sitting in the stand or standing on a bend watching. You know, the reactions are authentic. Like, so, yeah.
Well, I must say, when I wear the shirt, I don't change into it when I get to the track. I wear it from the moment I leave the house, and often we stop at the co-op in Kelso, and I go in and get a couple of beers, you know, because luckily Ali does the driving, and the number of looks I get from people going around the store just at the shirt. And it actually puts a smile on their face, and you know, it's just like Ali's. Oh God, you're not wearing that, are you? And I'm like, well, you know, why not? You know, it's not sort of clear tears of a clown hiding behind a mask. It's just, you know, having the fun, enjoying what I'm seeing. But
No, there's nothing wrong with that. You know,
no.
You know, definitely.
But having, you know, sort of looked at, as I say, Speedway in particular, is there any way that you can, and this is a general question, you know, can you look at certain riders and think, I wonder if they're putting on a show, a face, and you could actually look past that, or is that too difficult to do?
I think it's very hard. I think with the benefit of hindsight, like say Greg mentions, like say Dan Ayers, perhaps with the benefit of hindsight, but without hindsight's 2020 anyway. You know, maybe there would be something to say there, possibly, but really, it's so difficult to tell, and I think that as from a Speedway perspective, as fans, we often forget that the riders are humans as well. I think it's something that we can often take for granted, and you know, you just expect them to be these point scoring machines. You know, that it can be difficult to sort of make that disconnect. You know, between the fact that these guys are just humans as well, like, and it can be a it's hard to say. I think without speaking out of term or speaking against anyone, I could be speaking sort of it's so hard to sort of pinpoint as to whether there is maybe there will be guys that are, you know, hiding behind a mask, as it were, or a helmet in these instances, but actually pinpointing them, very, very difficult to say, I would say.
I think it's very difficult to pinpoint that. The only way that you're going to be able to understand that is if you're not even in the same team as them, if you're traveling with them, if you're staying with them, you know, if you're touring together, and even that, you know, say for example, next year there was an Aussie comes to Berwick, needs somewhere to stay, and I say, well, I've got a room, you can stay with me. Like it would take me more than a season to figure out if that guy's hiding behind something, because, you know, you have to know someone for a long time, and it's usually you know, even your closest, your nearest and dearest, your friends and family, when it happens, if something, you know, tragedy does hit and they do take their own life, you usually are sitting thinking, well, I did not expect that one little bit. So trying to figure out someone who you're only seeing maybe once, twice a week to try and see if that's going on is very, very difficult. So yeah, because you never really know what's going on in someone else's head. It doesn't matter. You know, you can be married to someone for 20 years and you still don't know what's going on inside that person's head. You never truly know another person. And one way that's a nice thing. I quite like the fact that nobody really knows the real you. And the other side of it is, you know, it's sad in the way that you can be quite alone without, you know, you can be in a room full of people and still feel terribly alone. Um, it's a it's a tough old gig. It's all that person. I mean, you could have one guy say goes to Cardiff and stands number one on the podium, and the whole you know, say a British guy's up there, and the whole lot of them are cheering him, Union Jacks are waving, and he's taking it all in and loving it. Next year, a guy could go up there, same nationality, Cardiff winner, and he's got a mask on, and he's just thinking, I just want to get home to my dog, or I want to get home to my, you know what I mean, my job's done. So the individuality of it, it's so difficult, and it's something that we need to. It was Father's Day, got that shirt. It's such a difficult thing, but at the same time, the only thing that we can do, as you know, we're not professionals, we can't help out. And the only thing we can do is just keep the spirits up, keep chatting to people, and I think the best thing is, you know, it's easy enough to chat to someone, but I think the even better thing to do is when somebody comes to talk to you is to respond, and that's the only way we can do it. Is just be there for somebody when they need
available.
it.
Just be available, isn't it?
And I think you know, if somebody's watching this right now, here's a perfect example, because we talk too much about saying get out there and talk about it. What do you say? You know, what is it that you say? Now, okay, fair enough, a text message is quite easy, but you send that text, how many times, well, sorry, you write that text out, how many times are you going to look at it and think, no, oh no, it's the build up to sending it. Come up to, you know, if it was me, somebody come up to me in the bar, all right, how are you getting on? Oh, I've not actually had a good week. All right, what's been on? Oh, well, it's kind of because of last week. And then the week before, I've actually had a pretty shitty month, and I've actually had a pretty shitty 6 months. And I'm just, you know, and I would quite happily be like, right, let's go and sit down at the table and let's have a wee chat and see what's going on. And I think, shouldn't really say it, but get a couple of pints in you, get some of that Dutch courage on, and go and sit down and have a chat with a mate, and just offload it all. And that's one of the ways to do it, but it is quite difficult to do that. But it's like jumping off the top diving board in the swimming pool. Then people will feel like, oh, I'm here, I need to do it. And I would say, you know, obviously we don't have a percentage yet because nobody will tell, but how many people have turned around and went, no, not today, I'll do it next week. Just jump in and say it, and everybody's here to support each other. Nobody's going to go away, man. Just go and give yourself a shake and sort yourself out. You know, that's not how it works. Maybe back in the old days, if you went up to your mate in a bar, you know, I don't know what decade that would be, and say, I'm not feeling too good just now. I'm feeling pretty low. The guy's going to stand there and go, pull yourself together, man. Stop being a sissy. That's what happened. But it's different now because we see it so much, and we see how badly it can affect lives. It would, you know, the impact that it has on people and friends and families, for someone who's went through such a bad time and done that, you know, that family, that friend's got to live for the rest of their life thinking, why didn't they come and say something to me? Which is totally not their fault, but it impacts them for a good rest of their life, and then it will impact their mental health. So I do think that we all need to stick together and just stick an arm around each other and say it'll be all right, because it will be fine, fine.
Well, Lucia, one of the things that always struck me was I watched a documentary, and I think it was to do America, and it was the fact that we are described as the human race. We're all competing against one another, but I think both for you and me, and from our background, school background in particular, you at the nuns and me at the priests, and what Greg's talking about there. It's this commandment in the Bible: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If everybody was to take a bit more interest in one another, and not be so much sort of focused on this idea that you're in the human race, and you can do what you like on social media. I suppose you would be out of a job, which wouldn't be a good thing, but in the sort of long term things, it would be better. It'd make life a bit easier for you, I suppose. I know that's kind of a bit of a rambling question, and I'm sure you can dissect the important bits out of that if there were any.
I think I agree with what Greg was saying, actually, about, we need each other. We need to help each other along. We're all on this small planet together, and, cooperation and compassion is better than competition. And that's not to say that obviously you're playing a sport and that's a different kind of competition. But, if we pull against each other, if we only put each other down, if we don't champion people and help people to kind of be the best that they can be, then nobody benefits from that. It doesn't do anything for anybody. And I think that face that we show the world, I think perhaps we all have a persona that we show to the world, and we might have a different one depending on who we're with, whether at work with our family or we're with a sports group. That may change slightly, but actually that protects those kind of perhaps vulnerable parts of us, or those parts of us where we feel a bit more hurt or weak. And actually, as Greg was saying, if we can share that, and if that can be met in a healthy way, and we care about other people, then everybody benefits. Nobody
Exactly.
benefits from the negative comments on social media, or people put another. If we put another person down, that's because we lack our own sense of self-worth. If we've got to put somebody else down to make us feel better, then that says more about us than it does about the other person.
Exactly
Yeah,
that.
Totally.
But,
So I suppose if somebody is being critical on social media, we have to feel sorry for them because they've probably got problems in their life.
I'm sure. I mean, I think, as a general rule, people behave badly, or they behave in unkind ways to other people because ultimately they're suffering themselves in some way.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't make it okay, but I think, sometimes we can look at something in a different context. And if you've got people on social media, especially saying unkind comments, then yes, I would say that's because they're not doing well themselves. And it's a manifestation, isn't it? Those comments that they make are just a manifestation of them saying, I'm not okay.
And I think you do have to remember the other thing is, especially in the sport, and a lot of people forget it, especially a lot of young lads will forget this, is that it's not okay, it's not fair, and it's not like a rule, but people pay their money to come and watch that sport, and if they want to, if you're in the other team, if they want to boo you, or if your chain snaps and they get yes, because if you're leading a race, you get a flat tire and your chain snaps, they're supporting their team. They've got every right to cheer the fact that your bike's broken down. They don't know that it's going to cost you 80 quid to get that put right. They're more on the fact that their team's benefited from that. So a lot of people do take that to heart, and they'll come back in and say, "Oh, you want to tell the referee that the guy standing up there just cheered because my chain snapped." He's paid his money to come in. He's whatever. He's against us. You kind of just have to take that on the chin. It's the same as if if you're playing football or rugby, for example. If someone knocks the ball on, the other team are going to cheer because the guy's dropped the ball. That guy that's knocked that ball on can't go to the referee and say, "Oh, they were all they were all laughing at me because I dropped the ball. Referee's just going to go, "We did," you know. So you have to remember that it's not nasty. It's just more of a when you get into that moment.
Yeah.
When you get into that moment, I've done it myself. I have been riding for the Bullets, and you know, up against the opposition. I've watched the race, and a guy's like not hurt himself. He's come into the corner and he's slid off, and you don't like jump up and down, but you just go, oh yes, thank you. I mean, like a little bonus that we've managed to salvage a race win out of that, which shouldn't have, you know, a 5-1 instead of a 3-3, and you go, oh yes, brilliant, and you know the guy's going to get up from it, but it's just that's the way that sport is, and you have to remember that, and I think that's the good thing about Speedway is there's not much aggression in the crowd. You never ever see fighting at Speedway, is because I know, James, if you seen a guy say for instance at Redcar, if a you know Chris Harris's clutch flew to bits and somebody went, oh hey, and Chris Harris looked doing gun like that, you couldn't go an hour and say what's your problem, mate, because if Charles Wright's chain snapped, you'd be like, oh, that was a stroke of luck. So that's and you all have that. Yeah, exactly. You've got that mutual understanding, and that's why the Speedway thing, there's no that much aggression in the crowd, which is a good thing. That's why it's such a popular family of sport.
Yeah. Just sorry, no, on you go.
I was just going to say, it sounds like, you know, those people that are cheering for the broken chain or flat tire, they're cheering for their team. It's not a personal attack against you personally, is it? It's just a bit of a bonus for whoever they're supporting. And I guess the comments though on social media can be very personal and very attacking.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a different kind of intention behind it.
But the same side as if someone who has cheered, say someone's mother or father is in the crowd and their son is the one who's suffered the chain or the puncture, their parents might see that as an attack on their boy, and that's when things get messy. When it's not really, with the heat of the moment, it's a tricky little one, that, but you know, it happens. Just have to deal with it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Just to extend on what you were saying as well, Greg, about obviously there's not any animosity between sort of fans and stuff like that at the Speedway, and it is obviously like it's always been sort of billed as being like a sort of family sport, and that is like the actual sort of like extended sort of Speedway family, if you like, it's a very unique sort of, I don't know, fraternity, I suppose you would call it. And wherever, you know, everybody looks at, like, we all look after our own. And again, that's like something that, for that reason, that if anybody's like struggling, it should be almost even easier for them if they're like to come forward, you know. In that, I know it's not the case, and each individual case is different, but you know,
it should be,
should be like, because of the way in which you know, it's like yourself. If there's you know, when again, like when what happened to Danny Ayres, you know, there was, you know, all this, like, there's a major outpouring, a sort of support and you know, and fundraisers for his family and things like that, as well there should have been. And that just, again, these things happen almost like organically every time, you know, if there's a rider hurt, Speedway people are very generous with their donations and donations to the benevolent fund and things like that. So it is this big extended family or fraternity or cult. I don't know what it is. It should be, you know, if there is people struggling, then you would almost, I don't know, it should almost be easier for them to come forward if they're part of that. But I know it won't be, but you would think it would be.
Yeah, it's just it's a struggle, but hopefully we can, you know, even if this has reached out to one person, and that's not, and you know, that's not just riders. That can be, like, as I said, when we were discussing it, it's just like if you're track staff, if you're working the turnstile, if you're a fan, you know, if you go there every Saturday night, maybe that's all you've got. Maybe that's the only thing you've got. Maybe you're just you could be sitting in a flat on your own, no family, and you just go to the Speedway. Don't even mix with anybody there. If you're just having a little bit of a tough time, we're all here. You know, it's not the same as like what it is with football, where you can't really get to the guys taking part in the sport. We're
No.
very open. I certainly am with my social media. I would speak to anybody, but um, it's out there to absolutely anybody who's struggling. I got a message before of Taz on my Facebook when she knew that I was coming on here, and she was saying that she suffers with severe mental health problems, and she says if it hadn't been for the Speedway, she wouldn't probably be here. It's kept her going, and it does just show. I mean, not saying that Speedway's the magic medicine that'll keep you going, but that's what her
It is for
thing
some
is.
people, though. It is for some
Aye,
people, and
it's like
I,
everybody needs
again,
a thing, and
I can totally
I
relate to
feel
that. Totally relate to
yeah,
that.
I feel for the people who you know don't have anything, like they've nothing. There are, and it's sad to say there are people out there who don't even have that one night dedicated to go for a pint
Yeah.
or anything like that, and it's very very lonely, and you do feel terrible for these people, but again, if we've reached out to absolutely anybody, even if it takes a couple of days, a week, or a month, you know, or I bump into them on Saturday night after the meeting and say, "Oh, I watched that chat on, is it Tuesday today? Yes, it is. If
All day. All,
all day. If I watched that on Tuesday and you gave me the courage to go and speak to a doctor,
whoever.
and then perfect, you know, that's good. It's one person that's it's helped. So yeah, we just I think we all need to stick together and enjoy what we've got. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd agree with that. Again, if it does help, as you say, just one person, it's ultimately been
Hmm.
totally worthwhile. But yeah, it is. As I say, it is. I would second that as well, and I can totally relate to what you're saying about if it hadn't been for the Speedway, probably wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that um, it, it's helped me immensely through again sort of hard times, dark times, whatever you want to say, and
Hmm.
you know and again in particular when like say when my uncle passed away, um, obviously he was a big Speedway fan and stuff like that, and it was one of those things that's like, right, well, do you know what, we'll not sort of dwell on it. He wanted me to have been there and watching the meeting that Saturday night, so that's just what
Yeah.
we'll do. And yeah, as hard as it was, obviously going there the first a few times when he wasn't, it was obviously difficult, but um, it's definitely the thing. It's the it's the one, if it's the thing that motivates you, the thing that you use to sort of the reason that you do what you do is to get that out of it at the end of the week, if you like, then
Uh-huh.
why not? And
No.
as I say, if it does help one person at all, then
Yeah.
totally worth it.
No, exactly that, exactly. And I would say, James, we're the lucky ones because we actually have got something. Like I said earlier, there's people out there that have got nothing, and
Yeah.
we have this. So no, we're blessed in that department.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. As I say, as I said before, it's offered me stuff that I wouldn't. I mean, I'm just, you know, Paul referred to me as a journalist, and I'm not. I'm no more a journalist than fly in the air, but I'm just a guy that has the platform and the thing today, and it's I wouldn't have that if it wasn't for the Speedway, and I wouldn't have it in particular if it wasn't for Berwick Speedway. So. There's a lot to be thankful for in that regard.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I cut out for a while. My computer actually switched off, but luckily the StreamYard thing just kept going. And when I powered it back up again, I do need to take the dogs for a walk shortly. I mean, look, when it comes to, I find life in general one of the most important things that we can remember is that if you can't say something nice, don't say anything.
Hmm.
That's always been one of my big things. If you can't, like you said, if I can't tell you, James, you're saying you're at your comfort zone, and if I can't reply, well, do you know what, James? you've got me fooled because you seem to be absolutely brilliant at it. A bit like like this comment from Alessandra. I always say, if the opposition riders have won a race, cheer them on, celebrate them. They've done well. They've come there to entertain us, and they all need to be applauded. I'm always reminded, and Alessandra will remember this. We went to many years back. It was I think at the last season of Hull, and Paul Thorpe was riding for Hull in his swan song, as it were, and he'd guested for us like a couple of weeks previously, and scored like a paid maximum of 12 out of 12. But then he comes along with Hull, and at one point he's getting booed by supporters in the back straight. Well, of course he does, he kisses his hand, pats his backside, and then blows it back to the crowd. And I always remember on the internet forums there was all this sort of that was ridiculous, that was a terrible thing to do. But me and Alessandra and Emily would just I said, oh, did you see that? Did you see what Paul Thorpe just done? I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Such fun to see, and it was bizarre because it was like a few months later. This was in the day when the days. I think it was a midweek, so it was the Grove that we went to, chatting with Paul Thorpe, and he says, I saw that comment from yours on the forum where you said about the fact that for me it was one of the highlights of the evening because it just reminded me of some of the other riders that have done that sort of thing. Give the home crowd as an array rider. Give them a load of stick. I thought the coolest thing I ever saw was Sean Courtney at Poole when he rode round, and he just rode round slowly, waving to the crowd as if to say, "We've absolutely stuffed you tonight, Poole, but you're gonna applaud me as I wave to you as if I'm the Queen of England riding past." And I thought that was so cool. That was absolutely brilliant. Anyway, I mustn't keep you any longer, guys. Greg, James, have you got any other questions you wanted to go over or discuss, or shall we let Lucia go?
I don't think of any more questions, or I've probably got lots of questions, but we'll be here on. It's been great to have the input on obviously what is a very delicate subject from Lucia. We thank her very much for coming on, and again, just to reiterate, if anybody is watching this and is struggling or anything, there's plenty of people in among the sort of Speedway fraternity that they'll be able to speak to, myself included, and they'll know how to get in touch with me if that is the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg,
no,
just exactly. I'll let you have final words.
Yeah, no, just thanks again for coming on and letting us see what you do and how to manage it all, and it's been good. And just to shadow what James said there, just if anybody's having any bother, troubles or anything like that, just give us a shout, and that's it. Preferably not before the meeting. I'm kind of busy. But you'll always find me at the bar afterwards. And just on another note, which I'd like to say, if anyone is going into the black and gold on Saturday night, I donated last year's Bullets race jacket to go above the bar because we don't have anything Bullets in the black and gold. So I've donated last year's race jacket, and I'm looking forward to seeing that up on the bar on Saturday night. Well, I'll have that underneath with a pint of Guinness.
I saw that at the bar, and I picked it up because there was that photograph of Gary Flint and Alan Farrow, and you said who the other two guys were as well, didn't you?
Oh yes, on the
I couldn't believe how heavy that race jacket was.
What, the Bullets one?
Yeah.
I'll let you hold the rest of the kit that I wear underneath, and you can see how heavy it actually is, and you'll understand why we're always sweating so much. It's not so much the actual physical side of it. Don't get me wrong, the physical side of the sport's pretty tough, but I'll let you feel the weight. I wear 2 back protectors, and when you carry them, you realise how heavy your That's why I don't do much walking when I'm riding. I just usually sit down and chill out. It weighs a bloody ton. So I'll let you have a feel it on Saturday night, Paul, and you'll be shocked.
Hi, thank you very much. Is that before or after the meeting?
Well, it's up to you if you want to do it after the meeting, but it'll be wet.
Be heavier or not?
It'll be heavier, certainly will.
Lucia, many thanks for joining us.
No, thank you. I really enjoyed meeting you both. That was a good
Yes, thank you.
chat. Yeah, and good luck and look after each other. And
and I'll see you soon. I'll see you soon. I think the plan is to go down to see Berwick versus Birmingham, beginning of August, and then we've got the big wedding. So looking forward to that.
We'll be up before then.
Yeah, and I'm afraid I won't have the dogs. You'll miss the dogs.
My cats will be pleased that you don't bring them.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Thanks very much. We'll see you later, guys. Cheers.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.